This podcast is loaded. There's a lot of things that happened the past few weeks, from Trudeau's resignation to the verification of Trump's and Vance's results in the Congress, to Trump's organization business endeavors in Jeddah, to Dubai billionaire Hossam Sajwani investing $20 billion in the United States. We're going to talk about all of this. I'm going to talk about the current status or the current position of the United States and why Donald Trump has used tariffs and why tariffs are working. Did he actually implement them, or were they just a scare tactic because he's a businessman, he's not a politician? What are we going to talk about? The military spending of the United States, Saudi Arabia and United States, what's going on between them? The Trump brand and the Middle East, what's going on in there? Why is Donald Trump so invested in the Middle East right now? Trudeau's resignation, the huge political fight that's happening between Trump and Biden regarding oil drilling and regarding the U.S. Steel and Nippon Cement. A lot of things have been happening. I didn't have the time to go through all of it on my Instagram. I hope you guys were following what I was saying. It's very, very interesting. So before we jump into it, I want to thank you all for your support. I mean, my followers are growing constantly, and I want to really thank you for following me, interacting on my stories, interacting on my Instagram. I'm working on getting guests on this podcast. Friday, I believe I have a guest, and next week I have another guest. We're going to talk about the very interesting things. And by the way, everything that you guys have been reacting on my stories, you know, all the polls that you guys are doing, all this, I'm using it to understand a little bit what you guys are thinking about, what you guys, a perception of some things. So I'm going to talk about the results that I see. I'm going to share them with you. So before we jump into it, please, I urge you to follow, share, like, comment, do whatever you want to do to help me grow this podcast. And once again, thank you. Let's get into it. So, starting this podcast, I want to explain to you guys what is the United States. Who is the United States in regard of global markets, in regards of other countries? Where is the United States positioned? Is it better than China economically? Is it better than Russia? Is Russia better than it in the military spending or not? So I'm gonna give you quick stats to help you understand and to help you position the United States in your head. So I want to start with the consumer power that the US has. So I want you to understand how big is the US is in regard of consumerism. So there's something called HFCE, household funding, give me a sec, household final consumption expenditure. So HFCE is a criteria, or it is a metric that could help you understand how much the citizens of a country are paying or are spending on day-to-day things like Netflix, car payment, rent, groceries, everything. So I'm gonna start with countries that we are familiar with. Lebanon in 2019, its HFCE was $46 billion. So in 2019, $46 billion were spent on goods and services in Lebanon. In 2022, Saudi Arabia HFCE was $409 billion. 2019, we have UAE at $163 billion. So these are very small numbers in regards of other countries. I'm going to give you the top 4 countries. In 4th place, we have Japan at $2.37 trillion. Then we have China at $6.96 trillion. Then we have the European Union, the whole European Union, everybody in the European Union spent on goods and services in 2023 $9.86 trillion. So it's $9.86 trillion. China in 2023 $6.96, and Japan in 2023 it's $2.37 trillion. Now the US comes in first place. In 2023, the US HFCE was $21 trillion. You have $21 trillion in 2023 that have been spent on goods and services by its civilians. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this to help you understand that the United States has a card, or has an advantage that not all presidents know how to use. Ronald Reagan knew how to use it, and now Donald Trump knows how to use it. And this card that I call it the consumerism card. What does a consumerism card? It's the HFCE. Any country in the world that is exporting any goods or services, they want to export to the United States. They want to sell their products to the United States. If their HFCE is $21 trillion, there's no country, there's no company in the world that doesn't want to sell to the United States. So Donald Trump, he knows that. He knows that we have a high HFCE. Well, not we, he and the United States have a high HFCE. So when he threatens with tariffs, saying that I'm gonna input a 25% tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, if they don't fix their borders, well, of course Canada and Mexico are going to have to fix their borders. Of course they're going to be very afraid not to do that, because a 25% tariff will damage their economy and their export economy significantly. They didn't want to do that. And the proof is that when Donald Trump said that he wanted to implement a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico in November, in December 17th, so less than a month later, you have the Canadian government passing a border bill of $1.3 billion over 6 years to fortify their borders and stop the fentanyl and stop the illegal immigration to the US through the Canadian border. Because they knew that a 25% tariff on Canadian goods and services would really damage their export economy. So the consumerism card, you have to understand that. Why is Donald Trump using it? Well, because he knows that he has the highest HFCE. He knows that everybody in his country is a spender. I mean, the United States has the highest number of millionaires. So every country wants to do business with the United States. So if I was him, I would threaten everybody with tariffs if they don't do whatever I want. So that's that. Now I want to move a little bit past the HFCE, and I want to explain to you a little bit the import-export of the United States. So who is the biggest exporter to the United States? Which country exports the most to the United States? And that's depending on the International Trade Administration. So in third place comes Canada. Canada in 2023, I believe, $419 billion were exported to the United States. Mainly it was energy products, vehicles, and machinery. In second place, $27 billion a year by China. So China exported $427 billion that year to the United States. Also electronics, apparel, and machinery. And in number one, we have Mexico, $475 billion a year. Most of them are vehicles, electronics, and also machinery. So when Donald Trump says that I want to put a 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, well, the biggest exporters to the United States are Canada and Mexico. So it was clearly just a scare tactic, a tactic to scare Canada and Mexico so they can fix their borders, or else they will have to face tariffs. And what amazes me is that the left-wing media, or anybody that doesn't really understand politics, doesn't really understand maybe economics, started saying that if Donald Trump will do that, he will crash the economy. And they're right. If the 25% tariff was actually implemented, it would crash the economy. But it was clearly a scare tactic, and they fell for it, and it worked. We see how Mexico sat down on the table with Donald Trump, and they hash out everything that's going on. And now Donald Trump is going to do the biggest deportation operation in the United States. And then he's going to react. There's an act called Stay in Mexico Act, where if people wanted to move to the US, or they wanted to immigrate to the US, they're going to have to stay in Mexico until their papers get approved, so they can go to the US. Now it's not like that. Now they just get into the US and wait 10 to 15 years until their papers get approved, and then say that, yeah, you're an American citizen after 15 years sitting there. So they're going to do a Stay in Mexico Act. So this is regarding what's going on with the US worldwide. Now, to also help you understand where the US stands, not just economically, we have to understand militarily what's going on over there. So I have the numbers in front of me, and I want to disclose something. These numbers are these are official numbers. But numbers from China, from Russia, or from the US, we don't know if they're actually true or not, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of numbers, or there's a lot of spending, military spending, that haven't been disclosed, fully disclosed. But in fourth place, we have India, spending per year in 2024 $132 billion. So that's $132 billion. Russia spent $225 billion in 2024 on military expenditure. China spent $373 billion. That's $373 billion in 2024. And the United States spent $933 billion in 2024 regarding military expenditure. You imagine China 373, but you have the US at $933 billion. That's a huge number. We're coming to close to $1 trillion a year on military expenditure. And fun fact, that the United States is responsible of 40% of total military budget in the world. So the total military budget in the world, 40% of it is the US, and the other 60% is divided amongst all other countries. So you have to understand how big and how powerful is the United States. And when you have a president like Donald Trump that understands how powerful the United States is, well, a lot of things will change, and a lot of other companies, a lot of other countries will have to sit down on Donald Trump's table and do the deals that he wants, because they know he's gonna use the United States power to the United States benefit. And that's what we're seeing right now when Joe Biden banned, let's say, companies to drill oil and gas on their offshore oil and gas or on the coastline of the United States. You have Donald Trump, he wants to remove that ban so he can secure the energy independence of the United States. So you have to understand, a president like Donald Trump is not a president to mess with. It's very contrary to Joe Biden. Moving on, so this is to help you understand where the United States stands. Now, if I want to move on a little bit from just the United States, I want to explain the relation between the United States and Saudi Arabia, because there's a post that I shared with Polyblog on Instagram saying that Saudi Arabia freezes their bid to enter BRICS. And why? Well, BRICS, for whoever doesn't know, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, C, China, and S is South Africa. So these 5 countries are trying to merge together, let's say, to be against the United States, or to be the next world power, or to face the almighty of the US dollar. And this BRICS initiative is not new. It's been there for a while, but it's not very successful. Well, because you have Russia is in a war, you have China's trying to annex Taiwan. You have also India, who's a very good ally to Donald Trump and the United States. And they also wanted the Saudi Arabian government to join them, but the Saudi Arabian government, I'm going to give you just quick numbers from 2022. I couldn't find numbers from 2024, but numbers from 2022. I want to explain to you how much is the Saudi Arabian government embedded with the United States. The export from the US to Saudi Arabia in 2022 was $11 billion. Most of it was cars. It was $172 billion. And the export from Saudi Arabia to the US was $24 billion, $23.9 billion. Most of it was crude oil. So just imagine how much trade there is between them, and how much trade there is also between China and the US. So I told you before, China is the second biggest exporter to the US. So the BRICS concept, the concept of having Brazil, Russia, China, India, South America, Saudi Arabia all together against the United States, I don't think it will work. I really don't think it will work, because all of these countries need the United States to keep running. They need the United States to keep selling their oil, to keep selling their products, to keep getting them whatever they want to get. Well, China, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of talent going from China to the US. And when Donald Trump threatened the BRICS with 100% tariff if they try to face or challenge the US dollar, well, not just Saudi Arabia froze, the whole BRICS froze. Even though Indonesia also now just joined BRICS, but I'm not. I mean, This is something to keep an eye on, but I'm really not. I don't think the US is threatened by this, because I really believe that the US economy and US military expenditure is way above and way higher than all these countries combined. So I want to move on from Saudi Arabia and the US. I want to talk a little bit about something that I've been noticing. That's not just the US, that it's Trump administration, or the Trump brand, and the Middle East. So I did a quick research of what are the businesses or what are the endeavors that Donald Trump is doing in the Middle East, and why is he doing them. So the newest investment that we saw from Sajwani, who is the CEO of Damak, which is a huge real estate company in UAE. The Sajwani promised Donald Trump in a press briefing saying that he will invest $20 billion in data centers in the United States. That's a huge investment. And that's following the investment from the Japanese billionaire, Mr. Son, of $100 billion. Now, you gotta understand, why are these happening? Well, first of all, because it's Donald Trump, and most of the businesses in the world, or the businessmen in the world, trusts him and trust that he will welcome them with open hands, open arms, to do business in his country. And also because he promised everybody that will invest more than $1 billion in the United States will not be stuck in the environmental background check of a company. So when you open a company in the United States, there's a huge process regarding ESG, environmental, social, I don't know what's the G for. And that process, it's taking up to 10 years sometimes. But now Donald Trump promised everybody who invests more than $1 billion in the United States to cut that process to cut it significantly. They could go from beginning to the process to the end of it within a week or two. So that's a huge benefit for businesses from outside of the United States. And that's why we're seeing Japanese companies and UAE companies investing in the United States. Other than that, we have in the UAE also with Hussein Sajwani. Hussein Sajwani is a very good friend with Donald Trump. So they also wanted to do Trump branded villas and international golf course in the UAE, because I'm not sure if you guys know, but Donald Trump is known for building international golf courses in the world. He has in Ireland, he has actually in Oman. So these endeavors in the Middle East from the Trump organization, well, I see it that it's something different for the Middle East. It's a different plan. Well, because the Middle East, since the 1990, 91, 92, when it was Bill Clinton, then Obama, all we saw was war, right? It was war from the United States, Obama and Bush and Clinton. When we have Iraq, we have Afghanistan, and blah blah blah. We could go on and on and on this one. But Donald Trump with the Middle East, it's very different. We never had a US president investing in the Middle East as much as Donald Trump is investing. So I think that's a good sign. I think you should look into it, and I think you should keep an eye on it and see what are the companies that Donald Trump is dealing with. So one of the companies that I have is Dar Al Arkan. So I don't know it personally, but I'm pretty sure my friends in Saudi Arabia or in UAE, they know Dar Al Arkan. And Dar Al Arkan, they have a sister company, I believe, also called Dar Global. Dar Global manages Dar Al Arkan's businesses outside of Saudi Arabia. So you should look into that company. They're expanding like crazy. And also we have the Qatar Airways US headquarters. So there's a lot of businesses, and there's a lot of relationships between the Trump organization, or the Trump brand, or Trump himself, with the Middle East. And I see it something very nice. I see it something as a very good opportunity for the Middle East, as something that is promising for the Middle East. So I encourage you to look into these businesses, into these endeavors, because I think that finally we have someone who doesn't see the Middle East as just a battleground or just as a war zone. They see the Middle East as an opportunity to make a lot of money. Well, using Saudi Arabia, using Oman, using Qatar, using UAE, not using Lebanon, maybe not using Iran, and not using Israel, because Israel, it's mainly military endeavors. But still, I think it's a good opportunity for us. So that's what I wanted to talk honestly about the US, Middle East, where is US standing, and all of that. Now I'm gonna get into the spicy stuff. I know everybody was waiting for me to comment on Trudeau's resignation. And it's funny because I do have some people from Europe saying that, well, Trudeau is the victim of Trumpism. And when Donald Trump came to office, everybody is riding the red wave and poor Trudeau. Well, I understand because you see Trudeau that he's a beautiful man, he has the flair, he's a young guy and all of that. I understand why you think that, but I'm gonna give you some fact checks and fact you to listen very carefully and understand how corrupt this man is and how corrupt his government was. And also because you have to understand that Canada is a socialist country, so it's not a capitalist country. The election system or the electoral system in here is not the same as the United States. It's not the people that votes for the prime minister. But I'm gonna give you some events that happened that will maybe change your point of view on Justin Trudeau. So in 2016, there was the Aga Khan vacation scandal where Trudeau accepted a private vacation on a private island of a man named Aga Khan. That's something I didn't know about, honestly. I just found it out on the internet. And there's the ethics committee in the Canadian government, and they found him guilty that you can't accept a private vacation on a private island. So that's one in 2016. Then you have in 2019 the SNC Lavalin. SNC Lavalin, it's a huge engineering company in Canada, and they were accused of fraud. But then they found out that Justin Trudeau was pressuring the Attorney General. Her name was Jody Wilson. He was pressuring her to intervene into the case to save SNC Lavalin, and he got red-handed. So that's in 2019. Then you have in 2020 the WE charity scandal. So there's a charity called WE. The government gave them $912 million in grants for assisting students. And that charity, later, people found out that that charity gave a huge amount of money to Trudeau's mother as a large, like a speaking fee. So they gave Trudeau's mother a large speaking fee after getting a government contract of $912 million. So also, Trudeau wasn't found guilty of it, but the public trust went really, really, really down. That's in 2020. Then what I also found some numbers. I did some research, and I found that so Trudeau has been in power since 2015. So since 2015, from 2015 till now, the Canadian GDP only grew 0.4%. That's also taking into consideration that during COVID it went really down, then there's another bounce and all that. So 0.4%, you might think that maybe it's good or not. I'm going to give you the comparison. The United States GDP increased 7.3% since 2015. So from 7.3% and Canada only 0.4%, you gotta understand why the Canadian people don't really like Justin Trudeau. Maybe my European friends or my Middle Eastern friends, they like Trudeau because he looks very beautiful or he has the flair. But the Canadian people who live here, we have high prices on groceries. It's impossible to buy a house. It's very, very expensive. The taxes are killing us. We're paying it. There's something called the carbon tax. I'm not going to go into that, but this carbon tax is the biggest issue in Canada, and it's been implemented by the Trudeau government. So you got to understand that the Canadian people were very happy that Justin Trudeau resigned. But I'm going to say something. Personally, I think what he did was very right. It was the most noble thing that he could do is to resign rather than being pushed out from his own party. Even though he was on the verge of being pushed out from his own party, but him resigning honestly is the most noble thing he could do. If I felt some affection towards him when he was resigning, then just imagine other people what they felt. So it was a good move. It was a very good political move from his advisors. You have also in late December, before he resigned, so he resigned now in January 2025, but in late December 2024, you have his deputy prime minister and finance minister, Chrystia Freeland.
She also resigned. Then you have the president of Bank of Canada, Mark Carney, also resigned before that. Before what was it? The budget. So they resigned before announcing the huge deficit that Canada was in. So all of that was happening in Canada, and the people don't like him. The money is not good. The Canadian currency has been devaluated like you can't imagine how bad it is. So we're very happy that he resigned. Sorry for my friends, my European and Middle Eastern friends. I know he looks very beautiful, but we need someone who knows how to manage a country, and we need someone also who could defend a country like Canada. When you see someone like Donald Trump saying that I would like to or I want to annex Canada, I want Canada to be the 51st state. Well, we want someone who has the courage to say that we're not part of Canada. We're not part of the United States. We are Canadians. We are a different country. We are an independent country. And whatever they want to say, just stand up for your country. And he waited to resign to say that. After he resigned, after he announced that he resigned, he said that. And also, to his credit, not just his credit, to his credit and the opposition credit, all three big parties, which are the Liberals, Conservatives, and the NDP. NDP means New Democratic Party. All three leaders, I think today, January 7th, they tweeted out saying that Canada will not be part of the United States. Canada is an independent country. So that was a very good political move from their side, showing that there is actually a political scenery in Canada, because at some point we thought that there's not anything worth talking about regarding politics in Canada, since Justin Trudeau has been in power since 2015 and he was doing whatever he wanted to do, so there was no one opposing him. So now when we see someone like Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservatives, whether he's a good guy or not, forget about this. But me personally, as Jean, I love seeing someone like Pierre Poilievre challenging Justin Trudeau, not because he's a good man or not, but because this is democracy, this is elections. I don't want someone staying in power for more than 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, and specifically if he's mismanaging the government. So having someone challenging Justin Trudeau is very exciting for the Canadian government. For the Canadian people. Now, I also want to explain to you a little bit how Canadian politics is working and what does it mean if Justin Trudeau is resigning, if you're interested. If you're not, you could skip ahead. So, how the government is structured in Canada, I'm gonna make it very, very simple for you. So there's three main parties. You have the Liberals, you have the Conservatives, and you have the NDP. NDP, it's New Democratic Party, as I said before. Liberals and NDP, these two are mainly always together. They're both a left party. Now, to be able to be a prime minister, you have to have the majority of the government. Now, Justin Trudeau, who is the leader of the Liberal Party, does not have the majority because he just doesn't have the majority. But the Liberal Party and the NDP together, if they vote together for Justin Trudeau, then he will have the majority. So, if you understand this, then you have to understand that Justin Trudeau wants the NDP leader names is Jagmeet Singh. He wants Jagmeet Singh to support him always, because if Jagmeet Singh does not support Trudeau anymore and he goes and support the Conservatives, then the Conservatives will be able to take over the government and vote against Justin Trudeau and then vote for Pierre Poilievre. The NDP by themselves, they won't be able to gather much votes so that Jagmeet Singh becomes the new prime minister. So the NDP or Jagmeet Singh is just a supportive body for either the Liberals or the Conservatives. Now, why would Jagmeet Singh, who's an NDP, vote against Justin Trudeau? Well, he said it several times. He said it several times that Justin Trudeau is mismanaging the government. Justin Trudeau has been found to be guilty of many scandals, but he would never vote against him. Jagmeet Singh would never vote against Justin Trudeau, and Pierre Poilievre talked about it, and I couldn't understand why. But then, after we did some research, we realized that Jagmeet Singh's pension, so he's been in the government for a while now, and his pension will kick in February 2025. So if he votes against Justin Trudeau so that Justin Trudeau gets out of the government, meaning the NDP is also out of the government and out of power, then why would he vote against him? He would wait until Jagmeet Singh's pension comes in or kicks in, and then Jagmeet Singh would vote against Justin Trudeau. So it's a little bit complex. And now that Justin Trudeau resigned, the next step is that to find a liberal leader that will replace Justin Trudeau. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau is still the prime minister. He didn't resign fully. He's just still a prime minister, and he said that he intends to resign. And now the government is on prorogue status, meaning the parliament is not working. It's a closed parliament right now until the Liberal Party finds a new party leader and a new prime minister. Now, that new party leader and prime minister, they need to elect him or find him or her before March 2025. March 2025, the parliament will restart working, and the new prime minister coming in will have to put their agenda out there, explaining what they want to do for the next couple of months only. Why? Because in 2025, October 2025, there's the federal elections, the Canadian federal elections. So Justin Trudeau just resigned before the federal elections in October 2025, so he doesn't actually lose against Pierre Poilievre. Now, we all know that Pierre Poilievre will probably win the next elections in October 2025, but what Pierre Poilievre is trying to do right now, which is he is the leader of the Conservative Party, what I think he's trying to do right now is to do this election earlier than October 2025. If he could pressure enough Jagmeet Singh to vote against Justin Trudeau or do a vote of non-confidence against Justin Trudeau, then Pierre Poilievre will be able to call an election before October 2025. It's very interesting what's going on. It's purely politics, and it's very beautiful and exciting. And my friend Georges Wardini, who's the admin for Polyblog, he said something very interesting, that the Lebanese or Middle Eastern people or anybody outside of Canada was very excited that Justin Trudeau resigned, not just because his flair or whatever, but because they were witnessing real politics. Because if you live in Lebanon, what he was saying, to his credit, he was saying, what are the reasons for a prime minister to resign? It's either they kill him, either they found him guilty of corruption or whatever they do, and there's a huge pressure against him, where you have millions and millions of people going to the streets saying that you gotta leave, or he never leaves. He said also another reason, but I forgot. But he's right. And now we're seeing in Canada real politics when we see a person like Justin Trudeau resigning because of this huge political pressure from all parties and within his party also. This is exciting. This is not something that we see in the Middle East. So I want you to keep track. I want you to keep eye on this. If you don't know where to look, if you don't know what to read, just follow my podcast, follow my stories. I'm gonna keep updating you on this. Now, the last thing I want to address, it's the Trump's troll. Trump wants to annex Canada. He wants to change the name from the Gulf of Mexico to a Gulf of America. He wants to also purchase Greenland. He wants to also purchase Panama Canal. So all these, what do we call them? I don't want to say something that's wrong, but all these trolls, let's say, or all these claims that Donald Trump is saying, I really don't know what to do with them. I'm going to be very honest with you. I can't analyze it. I don't understand why is he saying this. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. One, the first possibility that any left-wing person will tell you that he's crazy, he has a lot of power, he wants to do whatever he wants to do, he's an old man, and whatever. Look, it is a possibility. I don't believe it. Second option is that he's just saying this to troll, just to have fun, just to say things to catch the attention of the media, and he's known to do this, which it might be the case. But also there's a third option, which I thought about, and I'm not sure if it's true or not. It's that him saying these claims, these atrocious claims, maybe there's something behind it. Maybe there's a strategy behind him saying all of that to hide other news. I mean, because if I open my phone right now, I showed it on Instagram last time. When I opened my phone, everything was about Trump annexing Canada or annexing Panama or buying Greenland, or Trump saying that he wants to change the name of Gulf of Mexico to America. So all the news was focused on those, but there was also a lot of very important news. You have the US steel being wanted to be bought by Nippon Japan. So a huge company in Japan wanted to buy the US steel. US steel is the US industry, is the steel industry in the US. And They wanted to buy them, and they had a deal. Both of them, they had a deal going on. And Trump, I don't know when, he said that if he was president, he would block that deal because he doesn't want Japanese companies buying U.S. industries. After saying that, you have Joe Biden saying that he's gonna ban and he's gonna stop or block this deal, and that deal did not go through. So now we have Nippon, who is one of the biggest companies in Japan, suing the U.S. government, and you have also the U.S. Steel suing the U.S. government for doing that. So that's a huge scandal. That's a huge political fight. Also, you have Joe Biden banning drilling oil and gas, and you have Trump wanted to revoke that ban. You have also Trump going through his trials. There's a lot of bad stuff going on with Trump with his trials. You know, there's a New York hush money case that I talked about in one of my podcasts. The hearing was supposed to be on January 10th. Donald Trump and his lawyers appealed to change that date and do it after the inauguration. The inauguration is on January 20th. So he wanted to do it after the inauguration, but the judge did not accept. So that's a news also. So maybe Donald Trump is just trolling around to divert the attention of the news and the attention of the people to just trolling stuff rather than the actual news that's going on. I'm not sure. I mean, look, there's other news also. You have Meta. They decided to stop fact checking and doing community notes like X. That news came out just right after the news that Dana White is joining Mark Zuckerberg to the Meta board of directors. That's crazy news. What do you have? You have a UFC guy, a guy that built $1 billion company, going into the Meta board of directors. Meta, who was considered the wokest platform or the wokest company. What's going on? There's something going on. There's something cooking. A lot of things are changing regarding social media, and I don't know. Maybe Donald Trump is using all these trolls to divert our attention to them and not focus on the actual news. I don't know. I don't have the right analysis. We're gonna see what's going on. Is he actually gonna buy the Greenland? Is he actually gonna annex Canada? I don't think he's gonna annex Canada. You have to remember also Canada is part of the royal family and the British Empire, so it's not something that could happen. But hey, I don't have an answer for you on that one. And I think this is the end of this whole rant. I want to see just if I missed something, but I don't think so. Thank you for listening. So just to do a small recap, we talked about Canada's position in the world. So just to do a quick recap about what we talked about the U.S. position in the world militarily and economically. We talked about the tariff strategy that Donald Trump used to use it as a scare tactic against other countries, and it's working. But we talked also about the Trump brand and the Middle East, the relationship that's going on between these two organizations. Then we have the Trudeau resignation, all the scandals that Trudeau went through, why he resigned. Is it a good political move or not? We talked about this. We talked about the Canadian elections. Will it happen soon, or we will have to wait until October 2025? We talked about Trump's troll, Canada's annexation, Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, buying Greenland and Panama. So we talked about all of this. Thank you again for listening. Please, before you go, I urge you to follow, share, like, comment, do whatever you want to do to help me grow this podcast. And I'll see you on the next one.